What chance is there of a breakthrough in deadlocked talks on the EU's long-term budget? Many predict none. Lucinda Crichton, Ireland's Minister for European Affairs, however, sees some grounds for optimism.
I think there's a very strong possibility that we will agree a deal at Council on Thursday or Friday. I think everybody is prepared to be pragmatic. I think all member states recognise the need now to move forward on the MFF, to agree an overall budget and to get down to the business of negotiating with the Parliament. And I'm pretty confident that that can happen this week.
Even the British having declared their position that they want serious cutbacks from the level of budgetary expenditure that the Parliament is proposing.
It's obvious that the overall budget size will be reduced, while at the same time trying to ensure that the key policies are still adequately funded. It's not just a question of less spending, it's a question of better spending, and that might sound a little bit like a cliche, but I mean, I think in terms of the policy areas like Horizon 2020, for example, which is, investment in research and innovation, there is a huge amount of scope to spend those monies better, more smartly, and in future-oriented policy areas.
David Cameron's speech 2 weeks ago didn't go down terribly well on his vision for reforming Britain's relationship with the European Union. What can you say or do to bring to bear on David Cameron and wider on Britain's Eurosceptics that perhaps would help to narrow the gap?
A lot of the points that David Cameron raised are shared by many leaders around Europe, and indeed by many governments and citizens around Europe. The need for greater democratic accountability, the need for new initiatives to enhance competitiveness and to grow the European economy. I think these are the things that we're talking about as the Irish presidency.
And the prospect potentially of Britain out of Europe, is that a disaster in waiting, or is it up to the British people?
It's both. I mean, I think it would be churlish to say that it wouldn't have a very negative impact on the EU. We are a pro-trade country in Ireland. We are very much committed to the single market agenda, and we consider the UK to be a vital partner in that process.
Mali was raised by the French President in his speech to Parliament today. Do you think the rest of Europe is doing anywhere near enough to support what the French are doing in Mali? For
many EU member states, they certainly don't intend or wish to get involved at the front line in terms of the military intervention in Mali, but they're supporting. Well,
if the fight is to protect Europe from jihadism and from terrorism, should they not be doing that?
There are ways and means, and it's not always a question of sending soldiers to the front line. I mean, as we have seen in the response to Mali, a lot of the support that's coming is coming from member states who are providing logistical support, and that's just as important. In our case, obviously, Ireland is a neutral country. We won't participate in the military operation, but we are very actively considering, and I hope that we might be in a position to send troops for the EUTM, the training mission, which is also very important. So it's not a question of EU member states going in and sort of remaining there in the medium or long term, but rather a short intervention, which is the case at the moment, led by France, but backed up by strong support and training for the domestic defence and security.
And in the context of that, also greater support for the opposition forces in Syria?
I think it would be irresponsible of the EU to simply say that anybody who declares themselves to be an opposition force should be armed and should receive the full support of the European Union. I think we have to be very careful about it, and we have to take a very objective and reasoned approach to it. So when it comes to Syria, I think the EU exercised caution. We took our time, we reflected, we got to know the different elements of the opposition forces, and there are many. There is support being provided, but it's a very sensitive balancing act. But I don't think that we should take rash decisions, and I don't think that we should take decisions that potentially will escalate the violence and escalate the number of civilian deaths, which nobody wants to see happen.